You're listening to Hot 1240, Hot News Talk Radio, Clutch with Keon Rose. That is, I have some things that I need to talk about today. It's going to be kind of a heavy day with regards to the subject matter. We will talk about Ryan Lochte, which is always hilarious, and you know, we'll get there. But at the moment, we've got a couple of things that are a little heavy to start the show. But we also have the fact that today is the first day of high school football in the greater Chattanooga area. All of these games are going to be popping off. So we'll talk about that as well as we get into the show. Jim Grobe in Baylor, his first real issue at Baylor that he's going to have to deal with here. And it's already off to a bad start. It's already off to a bad start. Now he's handling it pretty well, but he just said some things in a way that seems really weird to me. Seems really odd. So we will talk about that. Like I said before, we'll talk about Ryan Lochte, and we're just gonna get it rolling here. You're listening to Hot 1240, Hot News Talk Radio, Clutch with Keon Rose. Make sure to check us out on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. You can get to all of those links from our website, hotnewstalkradio.com. You can also stream all of our programming, local and national programming. We are the affiliates with CBS News, and we also feature a lot of Fox broadcasts. For instance, The Herd with Colin Cowherd. You could catch that from noon to 3 here on Hot News Talk Radio. So make sure to check that out. Make sure to check us out on the TuneIn Radio app. Again, that's the TuneIn Radio app, completely free for your mobile device and whatever app store you use. Simply search Hot News Talk Radio in the app. Give us a favorite. Press play. You'll have Hot News Talk Radio everywhere you go. This show we do from 6 to 7. We sit around. We talk about sports, whatever the big sports topic of the day is. And high school football is certainly among them. So we'll talk about some of the games that are going to be happening in the area, as well as a story that came out of Baylor, the university, not Baylor High School, just to be clear about that, because Jim Grobe is going to have to already start being a disciplinarian. He's going to be punishing Ishmael Zamora after Ishmael Zamora was caught on video beating his dog. And I don't know if there's a more extreme word than beating his dog, because Ishmael Zamora was going to town on his dog. And it's a video, and you can find it on the news website of the local Texas news organization that uncovered the video. But beating your dog is one of those things that you shouldn't do. Shouldn't beat your kids either. Spank, sure. Beat, what? No, slaves get beat. All right, if you want to discipline a dog, if you want to discipline a kid, you have to make sure that the amount of discipline that you're dishing out is a reasonable amount of discipline. And this guy is standing over his dog with a belt, and I mean the belt is coming back behind the shoulder, and he is coming down on the dog. It was disgusting. Like, it was hard to watch. Like, I threw up in my mouth a little bit watching it. He's beating the dog, and then at some point he kicks the dog also. And the quote from Jim Grobe, I don't want to say it was tone deaf, and it's KXXV News 25 that put out the video. And the guy is just beating up on his dog. And I'm looking at it and I'm going, how is it that you can hear an animal whimpering like that and just do nothing and just feel perfectly fine with what your behavior is? I mean, we had that question, I guess, with Michael Vick as well, when Michael Vick was abusing the dogs that he was abusing, was just how do you get to be okay with that behavior with an animal that can't speak for itself, with an animal that can't tell you to stop? How is it that you hear the whimpering and go, yeah, no, I'm still doing this? I have no idea. You have to have some level of I I don't want to say psychopathy, but I guess that's what I'm looking for, to be able to do that and not feel anything, or at least not feel enough to stop. I mean, that's what gets me there. To not feel enough to stop doing it. I mean, you hear the dog whimpering, and he doesn't stop. And Zamora released a statement that said, "I lost my temper trying to discipline him." He said, "I've been through training with a dog trainer to help me learn new potty training tips." Man, you can't potty train something by beating it like that. What are you doing? People have learned to potty train dogs for eons with a newspaper. Newspaper. You know, you smack his butt with the newspaper. You take his nose. You put the nose in the poo. Then he knows, you know what? I can't do this here. What are you talking about? I had to beat the dog and kick the dog to get the dog to not go in the house. Okay, here's what I have for Ishmael Zamora. Okay, here's what I've got. I've got news for you. I've got some advice for you here, bud. I've got some pretty good advice. Ishmael, never have children. Never, ever have children. Because if that's how angry you're going to get with a dog, I can't imagine what a child would do to you. Like, don't potty train your kids because don't have kids. What are you, serious? It's gross is what it is. And here I am expecting Jim Grobe to lay down the law. Jim Grobe, of course, hired at Baylor because after all of the stuff that Art Briles allowed to go on that campus, Jim Grobe is the guy that's coming in to fix it all, to clean it all up. He's a guy that's been known as having a moral compass. That's what they brought him in there for. The fact that he could be simultaneously a good football coach, which he is, and a guy that's got a moral compass. That's a win-win there. Like, you want a guy like Jim Grobe in there, and what Jim Grobe said here was, we're not going to tolerate it. Grobe said he's going to be disciplined by a bunch of people. This city is going to get a piece of him, and the university doesn't take it lightly. There will be some sanctions from the university, from an athletic department standpoint. We'll do some things. Hopefully it's a teaching moment and a learning experience for him. But this is monstrous to me. I mean, it's just such a terrible thing to do. And you're looking at Baylor and going like, how bad did it get at Baylor? But then you realize that Baylor was terrible at football for a really long time. Baylor was really, really, really bad at football for the longest time. And what you're coming to grips with at Baylor, okay, because Baylor was bad for a really long time, and then all of a sudden they got pretty good with Art Briles, who is an amazing football coach. And you compare Baylor and what's going on there to Ole Miss. Ole Miss also was bad for a really long time, and then suddenly Ole Miss is like, hey, we can get you those 9-10 wins a year from being in the pits of the SEC West. They climbed out of the pit. And so you're looking at Ole Miss and going, okay, Ole Miss has been accused of paying players. Okay, Laramie Tunsil basically admitted to taking money from the university, and he can't possibly be the only one. There are plenty of suspicions to go around as to how Ole Miss got that good that fast, which is breaking the rules of the NCAA. But if you want to get good fast and you don't want to break NCAA rules, apparently you can do what Baylor did, which is just tell guys, you're going to get a second chance over here. We don't discipline anything over here because you've got all kinds of bad kids and bad dudes over at Baylor. And I don't know why. Like, it's not an accident, though, because at this point, I mean, something happens once, it's an accident. Something happens twice, yeah, it's an accident. I mean, you start to get to 3, 4, 5 incidents from one campus, and all of these incidents involve the football team, not just guys walking around on campus, the football team. The football team can't seem to stop this stuff. You've got a pattern, and you've got a coach in Art Briles who apparently was just letting anybody walk onto the football team if you were good at playing football, regardless of whether or not you had scruples of any sort. Like, your moral compass could be pointing due south. And Art Briles apparently did not care, because you've got a guy who's on this team beaten the ever-loving tar out of his dog, and the only thing that he could say was, I got a little bit carried away. No, that's you didn't get a little bit carried away. Okay, when you get a little bit carried away, you're driving in a 50-mile-per-hour zone, and then you get up to like 56 miles an hour. That's getting a little carried away, right? You go to the store. I don't know how much you enjoy shopping. I don't, but my girlfriend does. Go to the store. You intend to buy something and leave. You buy the thing, you buy another thing, and you buy a third thing. You got a little carried away, right? It happens. I come to the meetings here at the station, and then after my show on Thursday, we have the Two Millennials Talk show, or Two Millennials React, or Three Millennials React. I don't know what the show's called anymore. I have it with Russell, and me and Russell will stay after that and talk for an even longer time. And it's, even though it's well past dinner time, we just kind of hang around and talk because the conversation is just so interesting. You get a little carried away. That's getting a little carried away. My dog pooped in the house, and I didn't want my dog to do that in the house, so I beat it and kicked it. Is not getting a little carried away. That's getting very carried away and getting into the regions of excessive, and you are a monster and a bad person for doing that. And to be clear, I'm not even an animal guy. Okay, I don't have pets. I never grew up with pets. I didn't have animals growing up. So it's not like I have like extra empathy for animals. Like I don't have the extra empathy for dogs that a lot of other people have, where you've just got dogs. People do stuff that's weird to me. You've got the dog coming up to do, dogs licking all over your face, practically making out with you. Like, I don't have that. Like, I didn't grow up with that. That doesn't make any sense to me. I've got none of that. Okay. But I respect your love for your dog. But if I did have a dog, you know what I would never do to that dog? I would never beat that dog like that. Like, that's just gross. And by the way, don't watch the video with your kids. It's definitely graphic. He's definitely going over the top in his punishment of that poor animal. And it doesn't make any sense. It's not just excessive. It's monstrous. Like you have to look at that video of yourself, because someone took the video. A teammate of his, I believe, took the video and put it on Snapchat. And the reason that he put the video on Snapchat was basically, former Baylor student Shelby Ball went to animal control. She went to the authorities. She said 2 hours after she saw the video, dogs can't speak for themselves. I felt like something needed to be done. Because that is, like, you can't, that should be your first reaction when you see that video, is like, how do I help that? Again, I'm not even an animal person. I didn't grow up with dogs. I'm not a dog person. I'm not a cat person. I'm not an anything person. I might be a fish person, because fish don't say anything. If fish want to go in the tank, they can go in the tank, and there's really nothing wrong with that. Fish are perfect. They make absolutely zero noise. That's about it. I don't want anything to do with the rest of the animal kingdom, but there's no way you can beat a dog like that, hear the whimpering of that dog, and not feel anything. And I definitely felt it. I felt a lot of empathy. I felt a lot of sadness, and I felt anger towards Mr. Ishmael Zamora, because that kind of behavior cannot possibly be acceptable. I don't even know what experiences you go through in life where you wind up at the point where you're like, nah, this is okay to do. And again, that guy shouldn't have children, because plenty of research has shown the reason why you allow kids to have pets growing up is that taking care of a pet teaches a child the responsibility of later taking care of another child, taking care of another small human being. If you can't get through anger with your dog without teeing off on the dog, there's no way on earth you should have children. Like, seriously, how do you get out of bed and move around throughout life if you can't make it through an interaction with your dog without teeing off on the dog? How do you make it through life? when people make you that mad? Do you just start swinging at everyone that upsets you? Because that seems to be the only way you understood. Like, my dog went in the house. I didn't want my dog to go in the house, so I beat it and kicked it. What? I just don't follow the logic there. Like, I just can't. And I am completely disgusted and perturbed by it in every single way. You know, and I'm looking up to see who it is that put the video on Snapchat. Now, because there's only two reasons why you put the video up on Snapchat, which is that you thought it was either cool/funny, in which case you also shouldn't have children, but just because you shouldn't be allowed to reproduce. And the other option is that you wanted somebody to see what was happening to this dog so that someone would call the authorities. In that case, you should have gone to the authorities, but hey, at least you did something. I got to tell you, this seems to be one of the things about athletics that's a little bit gross, where it's just like, yeah, this guy was allowed to be on the team, because like there's no way that you're beating a dog and like this is the first time that you've ever done anything ever. Like you've never been caught up with anything. The only thing you do, the only bad thing you do is beat dogs. No, I don't buy that. Because if you will beat an animal that can't say anything back to you, like what else would you hit? Like that is one of the weaker things that you can harm on this earth. And you're a football player. You're not a little guy. Not that would make it okay, but that means you're definitely doing a lot of damage. Just disgusting stuff, man. You're listening to Hot 1240, Hot News Talk Radio, Clutch with Keon Rose, and we're going to switch gears here to something just I guess a little bit lighter. The NFL has asked that the players that were named in the Al Jazeera report come in for interviews, and if they don't come in for interviews, they're going to be suspended. The league has basically said you're going to come in for these interviews or you're going to be suspended. And you know what? That is the craziest thing to me, that the league feels this emboldened that they can do this. This is pretty crazy. And the players' union is like, no, we're not going in for the interviews. I'm not sending any of those players in for interviews. And hopefully none of those guys break ranks. But the NFL has given itself enough power, and specifically Roger Goodell, who represents the owners and who should not be disciplining anybody, the ability to come in with these investigations and have you show up for interviews to these investigations. And it's not like the NFL has done a great job with these investigations. The NFL has botched a number of these investigations, and you can't help but go, okay, I don't want to be interviewed by the NFL because, as people keep saying, like if they've got nothing to hide, why don't they just go in for the interviews? And the reason why you wouldn't go for the interviews is you don't trust the investigating body to give you essentially a fair trial, and the investigating body is the same body that determines your punishment, what the punishment is and how long and when it starts. Which you should separate those things. Those two things should definitely not be the same thing, which is exactly why we have the phrase judge, jury, and executioner, is because those are three different jobs. The judge doesn't have the same job as the jury. The jury is deciding whether or not you are guilty. The judge is deciding your punishment. The executioner is executing that punishment. Roger Goodell is all three, and the players have a right to be upset about what Roger Goodell is doing, which is basically giving the ability to suspend players at will with little to no evidence over to the owners. He represents the owners, the people who make money off the players in the first place, which seems very bizarre. It seems like a very bizarre situation where you've got a guy that's got all the power. He's got a conflict of interest, and he's still willing to use it all. And Roger Goodell is because apparently Roger Goodell is a commissioner that the other commissioners have had the ability to do what Roger Goodell is doing. Apparently, Roger Goodell is the only guy that's ever had the gall to say, you know what? I'm just doing this anyway. You're listening to Hot 1240, Hot News Talk Radio, Clutch with Keon Rose. We're going to talk about some of the high school football games kicking off, and we're going to delve a little bit more into the world of Ryan Lochte next.
I'm blowing everything up. We're starting over. I'm doing a new show. I want guys who push it to the middle of the table and go over the top. Take a risk, fail miserably. I'm right, and I'm not wrong, and I'll never back down. Conflict works. Allow it.
It's The Herd with Colin Cowherd. Right here and everywhere. Noon Eastern.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds. We'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240. I'm Larry Daniels from Daniels Insurance, and on the average, our customers save $400 a year. We offer retirement vehicles and annuities in addition to other investment products that help you protect your family. Call 423-332-4774.
This is Mike at For the Record at Northgate Mall. We're the largest complete record store in town. We sell old and new vinyl records, celebrity posters, music posters, and we are the largest in town. Come see us.
Finding just the right place to live can be a daunting task. Stop your search. In Chattanooga, the place to live is Cross Creek Villas for under $1,000 and available for immediate move-in. You can enjoy this 2-bedroom split layout, over 1,000 square feet, 9-foot ceilings, an extra-large patio or balcony. And don't forget to ask about their preferred employer program. Cross Creek Villas is a gated community offering a 24-hour fitness facility, a beautiful pool and hot tub, and Cross Creek Villas is pet-friendly. Stroll the pet park with your best friend and enjoy the free use of their business center and clubhouse. Plus, if you mention you heard this on the radio, your application fee is free. Cross Creek Villas, close to downtown off of Highway 58. Go to crosscreekchattanooga.com. That's crosscreekchattanooga.com or call 894-0446. That's 894-0446. Redefine the way you live at Cross Creek Villas. Go to crosscreekchattanooga.com or call 894-0446. Cross Creek Villas.
Lingering showers and storms will slowly settle down through the nighttime. Areas of late night fog redeveloping lows 70 to 72. For Saturday, warm, humid, but another round of scattered afternoon showers and storms will pop up highs into the upper 80s with scattered showers moving on to the south and east later Sunday. This forecast is brought to you by Larry's World Famous Buffet in Trenton. Open Thursdays through Sundays featuring some of the finest home-style cooking around. That's Larry's, just off 559 in Trenton. And I'm 1412's Chief Meteorologist Patrick Core.
On AM 1240, Hot News Talk Radio.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds. We'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
All systems go.
Got a printing project on deadline? Advantage Printing in Brainerd offers the highest quality one-stop service in Chattanooga. Graphic design, printing, addressing. Don't create a mailer unless you first check with Alan about the latest postal hassle. He'll handle the whole thing for you. Advantage Printing. Your advantage is in our name. 4031 Brainerd Road next to the Bilo. Print digital or offset, wide format, engineering drawings, start to finish. Advantage Printing. Check the details with Alan. 629-1800. That's 629-1800.
All systems go.
Treat yourself and your vehicle to a sparkling shine inside and out at Country Boys and Toys. 9606 Dayton Pike, Soddy Daisy. Remember how it felt the first day you brought your new ride home, clean as a whistle, with that new car smell? Well, you can enjoy it again and again, over and over now, with auto detailing from Country Boys and Toys in Soddy Daisy. Call 309-0426. That's 309-0426.
Here comes Dale Earnhardt Jr. He's got third. He's going for second. Earnhardt going for the lead.
The NASCAR Sprint Cup Series is on the Motor Racing Network.
Hot News Talk 1240.
Hear it live on the Motor Racing Network, the voice of NASCAR.
Check it out live on Chattanooga's official NASCAR radio station.
Hot News Talk 1240.
Ooh. Bumper music loud. So, Chattanooga Times Free Press today had an update investigation into the Ottawa High School basketball rape case that happened last winter, last December. That involved a number of bad decisions by all the adults involved. By a lot of the adults involved. The investigation into Ottawa High School has now gotten to the point where we're now looking at the school having a culture of hazing, is what the investigation stated. And the head coach, Andre Tank Montgomery, knew about the, quote, excessive horseplay, unquote, that was taking place before a freshman on the team was raped, allegedly by 3 of his teammates. Now, one of the things in the report was something known as racking in which, and I'm going to quote the Times Free Press on this, players told Bullard that racking in occurred on the team prior to the trip, and described it as upperclassmen turning off the lights in the locker room and punching freshmen with their fists from the neck down, according to the report. Many players described, quote, racking in, unquote, as horseplay or boys being boys. This description is indicative of a desensitization and minimization of the behavior and a lack of education on what conduct constitutes hazing. It certainly does. Racking in sounds absolutely barbaric, and I don't know if you've ever read the book Lord of the Flies, but boys can be barbaric, which is what adults are for, right? Like, if you know that stuff is happening, calling it horseplay is downplaying what it is. It is bullying. It's bullying and hazing, which is engineered trauma, basically. Whoever it is that's in power, usually an upperclassman in the case of high school, is engineering trauma as almost a way of A, getting revenge on the people who did it to them first, and B, showing the little guys who's boss here, which you cannot allow high schoolers to do because they take advantage of this stuff. And where do they learn it from? They learn it from each other. Like, you have to stop the cycle of this, especially when it comes to hazing, because hazing gets to be institutional and something that everybody does. Like, it's just always happened that way. When you get to be comfortable with hazing, you're going to be comfortable with whatever falls into that. Like, what makes a culture is basically a thing that you take for granted that happens with the people that you are. For instance, just something little that's cultural. In the South, we call shopping carts buggies. And when I say we, I mean you. I call them shopping carts. It's a cart. I'm from the North and also Texas, where we call them carts. I got out here and somebody said, would you like me to get you a buggy? And I was like a punch buggy? I don't understand what you're telling me right now. But it's part of the culture. It doesn't mean anything to you to hear people say that, because that's what people say. And it didn't mean anything to these players to hear people say, yeah, they were just being racked in. It's just what the guys do. Because that's just what they do. The issue here is not just that it was allowed to happen. It was that it was allowed to happen so long that it merely was what they do. Okay? And part of that, too, is we've got an old way of thinking of things. We just assumed the old way of doing everything was better. Getting bullied for a really long time wasn't something that anybody cared about. Being bullied was something that nobody cared about. Like, nobody stopped it. Okay? I remember being a kid, I got bullied. I got bullied a lot. I was a nerd, and it was coming to me. Okay? And it was none of it was okay, but I got bullied a lot. And you don't tell your parents because you don't want to be embarrassed telling your parents like, yeah, no, some guy's just beating me up and I'm just letting it happen. But that's not what's happening. That dude's just bigger than you. In my case, it was a dude named Linwood. I don't even remember his last name. His first name was Linwood. He picked on me constantly. Okay. And I told teachers about it. And they were just like, so? And they didn't say so, but it was just something along the lines of, well, fight him back. I'm like, really? I was in third grade. I'm maybe 70 pounds. Maybe. I'm a tiny kid. Yeah, if I could just fight back, I would have fought back. I can't fight back. You're the adult. That's what you're here for. Because your authority removes fighting from the situation. Okay? That's the reason why when you rob somebody, when people get robbed, the robbery has got a gun involved. Why? Because the gun is the authority and the gun tells people not to fight back. Okay? When it comes to being on a basketball team and you've got a culture of one group of guys beating up another group of guys, and you realize the upperclassmen who are not just older, but usually, so far as high school goes, that means by extension, stronger and larger, are beating up the freshmen who are typically, by definition, smaller and weaker. You've got a situation where their size is acting as that authority to impose the culture, which everyone sees as normal. You're a freshman, you're just going to get beat up. That's just how it is. And when it's your turn to be an upperclassman, you're going to turn around and beat up a freshman. And if a coach knew about that, especially if he knew about racking in, if Coach Montgomery knew specifically about the racking in, he's in a heap of trouble. He is in a lot of trouble. Because, I mean, that is, I mean, I don't want to say, I mean, I do want to say it, actually. The story from earlier with Ishmael Zamora, who was beating on his dog, it is as disgusting as that, because what you're doing is saying, here's somebody who's smaller and weaker than me. I'm going to pound on them because it makes me feel better about myself. It's going to help me deal with the pain of somebody beating on me when I was in his position. And if you don't see something wrong with that, you got a problem. And your problem is you've been in these cultures too much. Like, you've seen this as a normal thing. And even before me, I talked to my dad about that stuff. Like, you just fight back. Like, that was just the way that you handled it back in the day, was you just fight back. But that's an older mindset, and it's, quite frankly, an unsophisticated mindset. Do you know who else just fought back? Cavemen. You just fight. Look, we are trying to train people to be adults. Okay? If you want someone to be a competent adult, you can't have them being beaten up on, because that tells them something about the world, which is that you're small and you're little, you're always going to get steamrolled, and you're always going to get railroaded. That's what that tells you. And then, to nobody's surprise, when you're getting railroaded by everybody bigger than you, the banks, the federal government, and you just take it. Why do you just take it? Because it's part of the culture. It's part of the culture. It's just how things work. Yeah, it's just boys being boys. No, it's bullying. It's hazing. And it never stops if you don't stop it. Okay? You hear somebody in danger, you hear somebody being hurt, you see somebody being hurt by another person, you stop it. Or it becomes part of the culture. It becomes part of the language, the way of talking. And an idea, as Malcolm Gladwell wrote in his book, The Tipping Point, a really bad idea tips. When someone famous commits suicide, do you know that the suicides nationwide increases? They increase. And the number of car accidents that happen where somebody tried to drive and caused an accident resulting in their death also increases. Even though we know that these are bad ideas, somebody famous committing suicide gives anybody else who was thinking about it, was contemplating the idea in their head, gives them permission to also do it. And something like that can be part of the culture. In Micronesia, it happened a while back, and it's all in Malcolm Gladwell's book, Tipping Point. In Micronesia, it happened that a boy basically was dating two girls at the same time. Both girls found out. The shame and the embarrassment caught up to him, and he killed himself. And what ended up happening was boys around his age started getting into relationships with multiple girls, the shame and embarrassment coming up to them, and then they would kill themselves. And it was happening way too often for it to be a coincidence. And it continued happening. And kids were just trying out the idea of killing themselves and things like that because someone in the culture let it happen and it made it okay. Someone did it. It gave everyone else permission to try it. And even though you can't come back from death, little boys were experimenting with hanging themselves. So now you look at Ottawa High School, where you've got upperclassmen beating up freshmen by punching them from the neck down, obviously, so you don't see the bruises on them. And they're not going to stop themselves. They're high school boys. And once they create that culture, it doesn't go away easily, which is what the adults are for. Cannot stress that enough. So that situation at Ottawa High School, as we get more updates on it, because this, again, we told you at the beginning of this back in December last year, and continue to tell you, this is a long way from over, and who knows what more we'll find out along the way. But, I mean, this is disturbing that this happened here. This happened right here. Okay, I mean, kids listening, if you're listening and you're a kid, if something is happening to you at school, you're getting beat up, you're getting pounded on, tell your parents. And parents, listen to that kid. And anybody who's a teacher or an advisor in between that level, boys will be boys is not a reason to allow hazing because it's cultural trauma. It's cultural trauma. And just because, okay, because that older mentality is, oh, well, I got beat up on, and look, I turned out just fine. A, so that makes it okay for your kid to get beat up on, and B, you didn't turn out just fine because you think beating up on another person's okay. Getting beat up on does not make it okay. To be clear. I got beat up as a kid, and I know for a fact if I have a kid of my own and someone is beating up on my kid, knowing what it felt like when I got beat up on and nobody helped me, I'm bringing hell. I'm bringing hell. You cannot do that to your kids. Like, let them get beat up on, know it's a thing, and just let it happen. How do you do that? You're listening to Hot 1240, Hot News Talk Radio, Clutch with Keon Rose. I don't know how that happens. Like, I've got nothing. There are no words to describe how that happened. An update on the Ryan Lochte story. Maybe the final update ever, because Ryan Lochte is he is a grade A buffoon at this point. Like, he's just been clowned beyond all recognition. Ryan Lochte, it's fortunate for him that he's 32 years old, which means by the next Olympics he'll be 36. He might not even, make the Olympics. At 36 years old, it's a very hard thing to do. Just because Phelps was able to swim in as many Olympics as he has doesn't mean that Lochte will in the same fashion. So, Ryan Lochte, who, as you now know, claimed that he was robbed in Rio, and then turned out he wasn't robbed, and then he instigated the whole situation where a gun did get pulled on him and the other swimmers that he was with, but the instigation was all theirs. They went to the bathroom, they urinated all over the bathroom, everywhere but the toilet. So of course the gun gets pulled on you. I'm not saying it's okay to pull a gun on somebody or that that's a normal reaction, but like that person was justifiably angry that you went and urinated all over the place. So they're justifiably upset. They pull a gun on you. They take your money, right? Because you're going to fix this one way or the other. You are going to make this okay. And he got the gun. And so, it just happened that way. And Ryan Lochte's story about how they pointed the gun at him and he was like, no, man, whatever. That story obviously doesn't hold up. And he made himself the hero. So when those two guys got pulled up on that plane in Rio, hey, they snitched on him so fast. They turned on him quick. And I watched Black Mass, which was an okay movie, but then I watched a documentary about James Whitey Bulger. And the thing that James Whitey Bulger did really well for the longest time was that dudes were not about to snitch on James Whitey Bulger. Ryan Lochte is no James Whitey Bulger. I'll tell you that right now. He is no gangster. All right? Because those guys turned on him quick. Ryan Lochte, the only reason why this story got out in the first place is Ryan Lochte told his mother he got robbed. And she, like any self-respecting mom, went to the media because no one's coming after my son and doing this quietly. So she goes to the media, which brought this whole thing to life. If Ryan Lochte had talked to his mother and she said, hey, I heard you guys went out tonight. What did you do? Nothing. You know what I did? We went out and got pizza. Well, what's the most innocent thing that he could have said that he was doing out in Rio? We went out and got pizza. We went bowling, Mom. You didn't have to tell your mother anything, man. You didn't have to tell anybody anything. And then the reason why he didn't report it to the International Olympic Committee was because he was afraid he would get in trouble, which again is nonsense because, dude, you're 32 years old. How are you going to be 32 and afraid of getting in trouble? In trouble of what? What are they going to do to you? What are they going to do? Like, I really wanted us to have a Two Millennials react to this week because that's what we would have talked about for the longest time. Ryan Lochte he said he got robbed, and then the whole thing turned out to be this wild fabrication that it sounds like it just came out of a comic book, really. And it got me thinking, okay, because I was on Reddit, and Reddit is a great place when it comes to sports conversations. It got me to thinking, what is the most ridiculous lie anybody has ever told in the sports world? A la Ryan Lochte, which this has to be the most ridiculous lie. I thought it had to be the most ridiculous lie. And it was on the college football Reddit. Someone asked this question, and I got to thinking about it, and I could only think of Manti Te'o, right? Like Manti Te'o, obviously. Manti Te'o said that he had this whole thing where he was a Heisman Trophy candidate, and there was this whole heartbreaking story about how his girlfriend died, and then it turns out that he never met his girlfriend, and that his girlfriend was online, and then turns out the girlfriend wasn't even real in the first place. This is a whole largely complicated story that I'm sure many of you remember, and if you don't remember, please look it up. It is on the fringes of hilarious. Turns out there's a lot of great stories about people who just told lies, straight up told great lies. And one is a story that was just embarrassing because the dude got caught. His name is Kevin Hart, same name as the comedian, spelled the same way even, but not the comedian Kevin Hart. Kevin Hart was a football player. He ended up signing with a Division II school, which is not noteworthy. Like, Kevin Hart should just not even be a cliff note in history. He could have just played football, had fun, had a productive life. And from what I understand, he actually does have a productive life now. But Kevin Hart is a guy who lied on February 1st, 2008, and made national news, where basically he said a number of high-profile schools were recruiting him. He said a number of high-profile schools were recruiting him, and a number of Division I schools were, to be specific. And like schools like Cal and UCLA. Schools were recruiting him, and he turns out he made the whole thing up. None of these schools were recruiting him. No Division I schools were recruiting this guy, and he had the whole high school come out on selection on the national signing day. He had the whole school come out. He had the hats on the table, like they have, and he had to sit there and not choose any of those hats. Like, how far could that lie have gone on before he finally should have said, just, you know what, guys, I made the whole thing. I'm sorry. I mean, there's a way to de-escalate that lie too, and just tell everybody, you know what, they're just not interested in me. Oh, look who's not interested in me now. Look, they're all not interested in me anymore. I can't choose between any of these schools. Before you get to the point where you're sitting at a table with a bunch of hats on the table from schools that didn't offer you anything. He got himself rated as a 3-star on Rivals.com merely from the interest that the schools he said were interested in him had. And they were not interested because they didn't know he existed. He was just telling people, yeah, UCLA is interested in me, man. Oh my gosh, I didn't know that you could tell a lie that deeply complicated. I didn't know that you could tell a lie that deeply complicated, and he got away with it for months. I mean, it was coming to an end. Like, that was one that was just going to come crashing down on his head. But my favorite story of the ones that we found were the one about this guy who basically wanted to prolong his football career. So what he did was he played for 4 years in college. He played for 4 years in college, and he got done playing football in college, was not going to ever play in the NFL. And he played at a junior college on top of that. He played at a Division II school. And a friend of his, he took the ID of a friend of his and continued playing college for 4 more years, and then transferred to the University of Texas at the age of 30. He transferred to Texas at the age of 30. And now that's a lie. That's playing the long game there. It's unbelievable to me. And then, of course, you had the whole Cam Newton thing. Cam Newton got paid, and the only thing that we ever got out of Cam Newton was, well, as they say, it's an ongoing investigation. So the Cam Newton didn't have to answer any of those questions about him lying, about him getting paid. The Cam Newton not for 1 second was getting to answer any of those questions. It's unbelievable to me. You're listening to Hot 1240 Hot News Talk Radio, Clutch with Keon Rose. Thank you for joining me this entire week. Have a fantastic Friday. Remember, stay safe on the roads. They're wet out there. It's not how you start, it's how you finish. Stay clutch, and I'll see you in 72 hours. Sons of Liberty up next.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.